afternoon and welcome to another Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I am your host, Michael Cornoto, and today's educator is none other than Tyler Wertman, and the topic is an approach to bebop. Thank you for joining us live. We love to hear from our listeners. So maybe you have a question today or you have a comment. If you're watching us live, go into that chat feature and just type out your question. And we're going to leave some time at the end of the presentation to answer anything that you may have. And I want to remind you, this wouldn't be possible without our great sponsors. So please be sure to check out the studio archives of past video sessions at clearwaterjazz.com's education and outreach section. And that's brought to you by Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as our Young Lions podcast wherever you stream. And that's brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. Just simply search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions wherever you stream. I know you're excited about this session, but I want to remind you that Tyler has given us so many awesome sessions in the past. I mean, from the basic trombone fundamentals, also approaching transcription. He's also talked about the business of music and not just on the trombone, but just, in general for all instruments. If you don't know who Tyler is, he is a jazz trombonist. He specializes in jazz and classical styles. He received his Bachelor's of Arts in Music from FSU and a Master's of Music and Jazz Studies from USF. You see him all over Tampa Bay playing, and also he's an instructor of music at the University of Tampa. So, without any further ado, Tyler Wertman, the stage is all yours.
Hey, Mike. It's good to be with Clearwater Jazz. Good to be with you. Good to talk about trombone. Good to talk about bebop. Okay, so we've talked about voice leading in the past. We've talked about alternate positions. We've talked about a lot of fundamental playing elements that we're going to continue here. Okay, I'm going to make things as short and concise as possible so that then we can get to some playing and maybe we can demonstrate some of these ideas. I think that's the most beneficial way of going about it. So what is bebop essentially, and how can we play this style more efficiently on the trombone? Well, bebop essentially, right, is a way to voice lead. If we really want to simplify it, okay, and voice leading, okay, through quite a number of different harmonic ways. Okay, so we have chromatic voice leading here, which is really quintessential because we are going to sort of explain harmony through chromaticism rather than maybe aim for certain chords, certain triads to play. We're going to be aiming for certain guide tones, right? Thirds, sevenths, through nature of chromatic notes here, giving us a dense harmony. Okay, if we were playing all these chromatic notes on piano at the same time, well, again, that dense harmony would sound very muddy. That is what I'm referring to. Okay, and something as simple as resolving to the major third through chromaticism is a great idea. Say we're in C major. So I started on the fifth, played chromatically down to the four, and then I had a chromatic neighbor tone into our third. Okay, so again, a lot of chromaticism happening here just for a simple resolution. Again. Okay, so quite a simple idea, but when applied, we can, create different phrases, for instance, and play with certain ideas, okay, without necessarily having to find new material, which is important. We've talked about voice leading in the past and phrasing, and both of these terms aren't going anywhere, okay, especially for this lesson. So we have chromaticism here. I just mentioned a term Chromatic neighbor tone or chromatic neighbor tones. Maybe you've heard of this term, maybe you haven't heard of this term, okay? And essentially what a neighboring tone or tones are essentially notes below or above our desired pitch, right? They neighbor our pitch that we're aiming for. Now, if we do a chromatic neighbor tone exercise to get to our third, well, then one way we can utilize this is 1/2 step up above, 1/2 step below, and then resolving into our third. And that's what we just played, resolving into the third again through concert F, concert E flat or D sharp, into concert E. And because we do all of those things, yes, we're playing chromatically, but we get a strong sense of harmony as well. And that's really important on the trombone. We can't play 1,000 different notes. So the notes that we do play have to be very efficiently picked out. We can't necessarily be aiming and striving for incorrect harmony. Okay, we're always trying to keep that harmony very clear in bebop. I can't stress that enough. And if you're not playing clear harmony for you or to you, well, you're probably playing too much. Maybe try to simplify the material that you are playing so that when you're playing, you're aiming for these again, key thirds, key sevenths, instead of maybe the roots, the fifths, because those are good, but those won't describe the harmony as well as the thirds and sevenths. Those two just pitches really outline and define what a chord sounds like. So on the trombone, on any instrument, rather, if we're going to play melodic ideas that utilize chromatic harmony, things like this, well, we need to hear that harmony clearly. How do we do that? We aim for these thirds and sevenths. Okay, so for instance, if we're going to play, well, let me rephrase. Where is a good place for you to practice bebop? Because maybe you're trying to play, over rhythm changes at 300 and it's just not coming out on your instrument. Well, that's okay, because that happens to a lot of people. And it could happen to you any given day, right? Sometimes you just catch yourself in a funk with your playing necessarily. So don't feel like we're machines. Every day we have to come and perform at this, peak efficiency. Some days your chops might just not feel the same as they did yesterday, for better or for worse. Okay, so take that into your playing as well. But a great place to start is over a blues. I can't stress this enough with young players. Okay, they begin to, analyze and dissect what a 12-bar blues progression is. But then once they sort of got a key understanding of what that cycle, is, going to the 4, coming back to the dominant, right, getting into the form again, they go past it for some reason. They never, really dive into the knit and grit of what the blues is. And it's just a wonderful progression that we can make harder for ourselves, add more chords, for instance, and then practice maybe more bebop elements. Okay, but instead of going just from 1 to 4, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5, for instance, for that 12-bar blues progression, you can add in certain predominants, okay, or predominant to dominant chords that resolve into, well, these chord changes here. Again, what is the dominant when referring to a chord? Well, the dominant is usually and always, the fifth. Okay, what is your fifth of C? Well, that is going to be G. Okay, so diatonically related to C is going to be G7, which is your chord. And if we were to practice that chord on trombone? Well, we can't practice chords, okay? We can arpeggiate chords, but we can play scales. So this is why chord-scale relationships need to be understood, especially when approaching bebop, because when you have chords, you need to understand what certain scales can be utilized to play, XYZ material over these chords. And so if we don't understand basic scales, don't expect to have really advanced harmony coming out of your instrument, unless you're just learning licks, right? Which some people do, to just broaden their, what they have, what they're playing. And that's definitely one thing. But having that source coming from a place of knowledge will help you down the road, I promise. And so with these basic scales, again, do you know your major seventh chords? Okay, major ninth chords. Do you know your Dorian minor scales? Right, really simple scales that were taught in high school, maybe. And from here, we can take into our playing to really develop some really cool ideas. For instance, you heard me say predominant and dominant. Okay, we talked about dominant, which is the fifth. So what is your predominant? Okay, your predominant is a chord that leads up to your dominant chord, which eventually, again, resolves. Okay, that's the whole point of this, is building tension and then releasing the tension into a resolution. So what is the tension that we're building? Well, the tension is our thirds and sevenths, essentially. Okay, so if we think about the thirds and sevenths in C major, okay, we have concert E and concert B. Those are our third and sevenths of C major. What's our fifth of this? Okay, so now you should be thinking in your head like scales. For instance, C, D, E, F, G. G is my fifth. Again, what chord is diatonically related to C major starting on G? Well, that would be G7, right? Because if we go to our seventh note of G in our G major scale, normally that's F sharp. However, in the key of C, that F sharp is lowered. Now we have F natural. Okay, this is really important. This is the voice leading that will go into concert E, your third. Is that seventh? Okay, so one way we can practice this is exactly like I said, just scales. And so what did I do at the end there? Okay, so I incorporated some chromaticism leading down into my seven. And when I did that, it really stressed that the chord, or the scale rather, that sound, that relationship. And we can actually manipulate it and hear G7 now, rather than just playing G mixolydian, which is really important. And so with all of these really simple ideas, we're outlining G7 with different ways, right? We have scales, just traditional scales. We have chromatic leading tones. We also have some neighboring tones happening as well. But nothing I've just played is anything else than those three very simple and approachable ideas that we can perform on the trombone and then resolve into C major. Remember that concert F will resolve into concert E. And for our third, which is B of our 5 chord, this stays the same now, right? So the B is a common tone between this chord progression. So what's really important here is not necessarily the B, but the F to E transition. Okay, so if I were to play what this transition sounds like on trombone, it might sound like this. So hopefully you heard that tension building into C major. And then once the resolution happened, I was able to resolve the harmony and then play that C major material. And again, for this dominant to tonic harmony, this is no more than simply practicing your fifth mode and your ionic mode or first mode. Going through it, really understanding the thirds, the fifths, the sevenths, the roots, and then creating music with those triads, those scales, and then find different pathways, right? Pathways to combine some of these notes, the thirds, the sevenths, roots, fifths, right? And that's sort of what I'm demonstrating to you all here. It's just really simple ways to approach bebop harmony, okay, which is just voice leading, essentially, and containing all of these correct chord progressions in our playing, right? Hitting the thirds correctly, hitting the sevenths correctly, outlining this harmony. That's what bebop is all about, right? As well as playing this at incredibly fast tempos with incredibly complicated, not complicated, but focused chords. Okay, we want to sort of outline as much harmony as we can correctly. That is the number one rule. Okay, so I just gave you guys, well, we talked about the blues, for instance. Now, in a traditional blues, approaching it maybe with blues language at first, it's just a great way to get a hold of this progression. And then from there, you can build into outlining more of the harmony. Okay, but don't push or challenge yourself too much. So what I'll do is I'll play a blues. I'll play an F blues 2 times. The first time I'll play more blues material, okay, using some basic chord progression harmony. And what I'll do on the second time is I'll keep the harmony as close as I can, okay, to the same chords that I was playing over, but I'll try to outline the harmony with those tools and devices that we've just mentioned, okay? So here I go. Let's try it. 1, 2, 1. Now, what I tried to keep consistent were the chords that I, was envisioning the rhythm section playing behind me. Okay, so for instance, you plug in X chord progression into your iRoB app, right? Those chords, not trying to manipulate those chords anymore, but really just trying to outline the harmony within these chords a bit more than maybe the blues approach. Okay, now with the blues approach, and both are great, right? And both can be used to build and aid one another. Okay. But the blues is just a great starting point for a lot of jazz musicians and musicians, excuse me, in general with improvisation. And so I encourage you guys to take that and expand upon it rather than trying to jump into, 10 of the beginning standards that every student should learn. Yes, you will get to that. But if you can focus and really understand with, what material you have in front of you and sort of the material you've practiced already, it's going to help you out, right? I'm not telling you to focus on one thing for a whole year, but if you have time to and really sit down with it, you will get a lot, okay, out of simply practicing 12 bars of blues and developing that into bebop. So what about you, Mike? How do you practice bebop?
Well, very similar to what you said, using the chromaticism. And I like what you said, like really take it slow and definitely know the scales coming off of the blues, because I think some people, they jump into it too quick. They'll turn on a Dizzy Gillespie record and they're like, this is it, let me do that. And they don't understand maybe the theory or the science behind it, and they get totally frustrated and they're like, okay, forget this bebop stuff. Which I know the artists during that time, they wanted to bump things up to another level. And some musicians looked at this as this is the elite, it's not quite cool or anything like that. It's like, we're going to show you our musicianship now. And, some people jumped into it and some people just like, nope. You had some artists like Louis Armstrong, didn't care too much about bebop. He even made a song called Deaf to Bebop. If you ever heard that song before. You ever heard that one before?
Yeah, and it's funny. Have you seen him perform with Dizzy, the Umbrella Man?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's so, I love it because you could hear those two playing styles. And though Pops wasn't a fan of bebop, he appreciated what the music was doing, but he helped create his style of jazz, and what was the precursor to everything, essentially.
Absolutely. So, I love what you said. Take it simple. Work on your skills, and I even like what you did with the chromaticism. Going down to the seventh. Knowing how to do
some
that.
Simple ideas, right? Because just like you said, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I hear so many students, like you said, they get scared. They don't know where to start. They might just jump in head first, rather than approaching these 2 or 3 simple tools and just shedding them for a week. And then trust me, you'll start to get the hang of some of these things.
I think it's the concept of it. It sounds too easy to just use that. Oh, it must be more than that, but I mean, maybe you should just start.
Don't kill yourself, man. You want to learn the hard way, go ahead, but you'll find the majority of players are doing these things in bebop. So you have to analyze, dissect, and then how can we put that into our playing?
Absolutely. And speaking of analyzing and dissecting and things of that sort, I just want to remind everybody, you can go back into our archives and get this. It's free. These sessions are free. It's great free content. I mean, you think about it, you can go out and get a private teacher and spend lots of money, or you could go in here and maybe listen to some of these master educators and performers give you the inside scoop, and you can do it on your time, anytime, by just going to our website, clearwaterjazz.com's education outreach section, and you can pick and choose. You want to learn bebop today? Boom. You want to learn about your arpeggio scales and 2-5-1s? Listen to this guy, listen to that, and just practice along, pause and play, and just learn that way. Just an idea. But we want to thank you so much, Tyler, for this great session. And, if you do have any recommendations, maybe it's something a topic we haven't covered and you just want to hear about more of it, or you want to tell how great these sessions are, or how great Tyler Wertman's trombone playing is, you can always go to the website, email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. We would love to hear from you. We love hearing from our listeners and the supporters of this great music called jazz. So until next time, I'm your host, Michael Carnotto. This has been Tyler Wertman. Hey, keep it swinging. Have an awesome day. Bye-bye.